Hi, it's Megan from Not Bozeman Science. Today I'm going to talk about the cell cycle, specifically with the regulation of the cell cycle via the control system. So this is an important complex process that prevents too many or too little cells from being made, and it's going to regulate the timing and frequency with which the cells divide. So we're going to be analyzing some of the different checkpoints, the signals that serve as stop and go signs so that we can determine whether the cell cycle should continue, other factors in the control system, and then the results of what happens when there are disruptions or problems with the cell cycle. So how does the cell cycle control system work? Well, it's based on a series of checkpoints, and so we're using this generic circle here just to represent a cycle. So if you think of a cycle as a series of steps, then checkpoints are steps where the cell must decide, should I continue this process or should I just end it all here? So it can do that in a couple different places. This, of course, is just a generic example. Maybe let's say there's one here, and then perhaps another one here, another one here, another one here. You know, you get the idea. So the decision that the cell is going to make, it's based on whether or not there's a stop or go sign, which we're going to talk about later. And so it's important to know that the cell cycle is going to function on its own, but it's these checkpoints and some other things that we do to regulate the cycle that are going to make sure it's doing the division properly. So here we have another generic circle that we're going to use to actually go in depth with the cell cycle in specifics. So some of the most important checkpoints that we have are the G1 phase, the G2 phase, and one at the beginning of the mitotic phase. So at the G1 checkpoint, we're just using this arc here to say, oh, this is how much time we spend in G1, though you'll later see it's not exactly proportional. But anyway, so here at this checkpoint, the cell can either proceed with the cycle or it may stop the cell cycle and go to phase G0, in which the cell just basically isn't dividing. It's like a period of rest. And so as stated, so here we have that checkpoint, and then as stated, there's also the G2 checkpoint that's going to occur before mitosis can begin, and this S phase is just another phase that we have in the cell cycle. But specifically, here's the G2 checkpoint because that's going to occur before mitosis can begin, so the cell is going to determine whether it can continue with mitosis or if it must stop. And so with these checkpoints in place, the cell is going to determine if it's dividing on schedule or not. And so where these signals come from and how they tell the cell to stop or go is really important to know. So an example of an external signal that we get is the platelet-derived growth factor, which we shorten here with this abbreviation. And so if you knew this already or not, growth factors are proteins that tell cells to divide. So if we have one, then it's going to tell a cell to divide. And this one specifically just tells a type of growth, a type of connective tissue cell to divide. That's just one example that we have. And another factor that we have is MPF, which stands for maturing growth factor. So this one has a lot to do with CDKs and cyclins, which Alissa is going to speak about later. But this one specifically is just going to tell the cell whether or not to go into the M phase, the mitotic phase. So you might see either of these mentioned when we're talking about signals.